But let's get right to the news. Tonight, President Biden will give the State of the Union address. Sources inside the White House say parts of the speech that address China being edited just a little bit right now after the shooting down of a Chinese surveillance balloon. Yesterday, President Joe Biden said the balloon incident will not damage diplomatic relations between Washington and Beijing. Speaking to reporters outside the White House yesterday, the president commented on China's decision to fly a surveillance balloon over the U.S. and his administration's decision to shoot it down.
Does the balloon weaken U.S.-Chinese relations?
No. We've made it clear to China what we're going to do. They understand our position. We're not going to back off. We did the right thing. And there's not a bad question of weakening or strengthening. It's just reality.
Why the Chinese need to make such a brazen act floating across the entire continental United States?
They're the Chinese government.
Let's bring in White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine, great to have you on the set. Good to see you. Will the president explain more? I mean, he was laughing there, and I guess folks who follow Washington and politics and international politics closely understand that espionage happens on all sides. Having said that, will it be important to make a clear message tonight about the relationship with China?
Can I just say, I'm excited to see you guys, Mika, Joe, Willie.
Yes, you're back on.
I'm really excited. But I'm also excited to see Jen. I miss her so much. Hi, Jen. So
yes, this is...
I'm in New York with Willie. so hi, Jen. I miss you. Anyway, sorry, I had to say
We're
that.
We're going to do press secretary to former press secretary in just a second.
Okay.
See how you guys do. Jen, on the other side of the...
On the other side,
yeah.
on the other side of things now. So I just want to say that foreign policy, the president's vision for the world when as it relates to foreign policy was always going to be part of the State of the Union address. That is something that happened the last time, or the last go around. We did it for the first time, and clearly this will be the second time he's doing the State of the Union. And that certainly includes how we have been moving forward with dealing with managing strategic competition with China. Mm-hmm. That is something that the president's going to talk about. When you look at the latest news, of course we take the latest news into account as we prepare for the State of the Union. None of that is going to change. The president is also going to underscore the America's reassertion, right, resetting its leadership across the world as he has done for the past 2 years. He's going to underscore that. And let's not forget what we're seeing in Ukraine. The president's going to talk about the continuing that international alliance to protect and defend Ukraine. So all of this, as we look at the foreign policy pieces of the president's State of the Union, is certainly going to be at the forefront.
And what about a strong message on accomplishments over the past 2 years? Some might say that messaging has been an issue in terms of showing the legislative accomplishments, among many other things, of the past 2 years. That they just haven't had a sharp voice on that.
No, look, Mika, this is going to be a Joe Biden speech. And when you hear it, that's what you're going to hear. This is a president that was a senator for 36 years, sat in one of those seats where he will be in front of Congress speaking addressing the State of the Union, clearly addressing the American people as well. And he was vice president for 8 years, sat to the right of the president, President Obama, and listened to the State of the Union that was delivered by the president then. And so he takes this very seriously. He sees this as an important moment. He said yesterday, as you were showing him having interaction with reporters, that he sees this as a moment to have a conversation. So yes, he'll talk about the progress of the last 2 years. Let's not forget, we have seen record wages go up. We have seen record jobs numbers. We have seen inflation starting to moderate the last 6 months because of the work that this president has done. And we've seen gas prices go down again because of the work that this president has done. Let's not forget why it went up, because of the war in Russia. So again, he's going to lay that out, and also really also meet people where they are, understanding that they are still indeed struggling.
So, Karine, we've heard from the president a number of times, including a few high-profile speeches during the campaign last year, one in Philadelphia, one just days before voters went to the poll, where he warned about MAGA Republicans. He warned about extremism. He warned about that they were threats to democracy. Is he going to make that same message tonight? Is he going to use that same sort of language tonight when some of those he has deemed threats to democracy are going to be sitting in the audience in front of him?
So I'm not going to get too far into the speech, but the president has always been very clear about the threat to our democracy. As you mentioned, he's made multiple speeches on that. And it's not just our democracy, it's also the extremism as you're seeing towards Medicare and Social Security. He'll certainly talk about that. And he's going to say, I'm going to continue to fight for two important programs that Americans, taxpayers pay into. We're talking about our seniors. We're talking about our veterans. So he's going to say, I'm going to veto anything that comes to his desk that attacks those two important programs, which is something that he's been very consistent about. So those are other extremes that we have seen from especially the House Republicans, and he'll speak to that for sure.
So, Jen, we know from speaking to you over the years, and Karine and this White House, there is a hint of frustration, perhaps, at the lack of recognition of what President Biden has gotten
Just
done.
a hint,
Just
Willie.
a hint. I'm being kind
hint.
now that you're on our team. $1.9 trillion put in to save a bunch of businesses and to help people get through the pandemic. Unemployment at its lowest rate since 1969. We know the list. So what can the president do to change the idea that he hasn't done much? Because you look at this polling even the last couple of days, and a majority of the country says, I don't think he's done very much. Or, yeah, I think we're still on the wrong track. What should be the president's objective tonight?
I mean, two things. One, giving a speech that even if it's 40 million people watch it, which is less than the Super Bowl, but still that's a huge number of people. That's a big opportunity for any president. It's the biggest speech of the year any president gives. But what he needs to do is tell a story. Joe Biden is an amazing storyteller. I mean, you sit in the Oval Office, Karine can tell you, and he can storytell for 6 hours. He needs to do that in the speech tonight. People aren't sitting at home and just like writing down data points, right? They vote and they move. They support people who they feel something from. So he needs to tell the story. I've talked to some of Karine's current colleagues and some of my own about this, and my former ones, her current ones. Sorry, that was confusing. And what they have said is that he's going to speak to the people who feel invisible, the people who don't feel heard. That's so important. The other piece that's super important for him to do tonight is to draw a contrast. It's not a political speech, but he needs to draw a contrast, and I expect he will, between his agenda, give him more time, I'm still working at it, guys, and the chaos people see on the other side. So those are the two things tonight, storytelling and a little bit of contrast.
Karine, that sound right to you?
That sounds exactly right. And as I said earlier, it'll be a conversation. And this is the president when it comes to really connecting with the American people. This is someone who can do that, right? This is the president. Joe Biden is known for doing just that. And he is the best messenger in the White House to give a speech like this at this moment, at this time, where the American people are going to be watching and telling that story, as Jen just said, telling the story of the last 2 years. And also, let's not forget the optimism, how he sees this country moving forward.
So, Karine, a major elephant in the room, I guess, would be the debt ceiling. We heard from Speaker McCarthy yesterday, who we should note will be sitting behind the president now for the first time in this speech, offering sort of a pre-buttal and suggesting that, hey, this is something that we should be negotiating over. The president has been very firm to this point. That's not the case. What's his message going to be tonight? Will he address McCarthy directly about a path forward?
So, I mean, we've talked about this so many times, Jonathan. As you know, the president has, the White House has, the economic advisors has, when it comes to what you just laid out. And I want to be very careful because I don't want to muddy the waters here. There is the debt ceiling, right, which is something that McCarthy was laying out, which is something that is the fundamental duty of Congress to work on. It's been done 3 times before in the last administration. It's been done 78 times since 1960 to lift the debt ceiling in a bipartisan way. We should not put the full faith and credit of the United States and use it as chicken. We should not put it in a place where we would put it in danger. And so that's what we're talking. This is literally their constitutional duty to do. And then there is the lowering the deficit. And that's where the president has said, okay, you know, I've been able to do it in a historic fashion, $1.7 trillion that he has been able to lower the deficit in the last 2 years. He's willing to have a conversation in good faith to continue to lower the deficit. The president was very clear last week. He said, okay, on March 9th, I'm going to put forward my budget plan for fiscal year 2024. What is going to be the Republicans' plan? What are they putting forward? Right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're hearing about cutting Social Security. We're hearing about cutting Medicare. But they haven't put anything on paper yet. What does that look like if we're going to have a real conversation on having fiscal responsibility?
Wow. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre will be watching tonight, and we appreciate your coming on this morning. It's nice to see you.
Nice
we really
to see you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.